Reverend Rita, hi. Welcome to Center for Spiritual Living and our New Thought Meet and Greet series that we've been doing for the last year. And tonight, as you know, is Wallace D. Wattles, who you're going to find out about from Reverend Patrick here. But before that, I wanted to just do a few announcements, not that many. Hopefully I'll remember them. Because I didn't write them down. Okay, so we have a spiritual cinema on Friday night. And it's a very interesting film called Miracle. Darren Brown, he's an illusionist. It's an hour and 13 minutes, and I know it's going to stimulate a really interesting discussion. But that's on Friday night at 6:30. And then, of course, we have Sunday. And then we also have Flying Solo coming up. So there's only 8 spots available. 1 is already taken. So if you have been holding it off and wanting to take Flying Solo, if you want to know more about it, there's a flyer in the back, or you can talk to me later. What did you just say?
He's giving me the sneak eye.
Okay. Okay, so what Flying Solo is, this is going to be our 6th one. And is it our 5th or 6th? I don't know. Basically, you come to this, and there's a few people here that have already taken it. And it's a 6-week, intense, 3-hour every week, delving into a part of your life that you might want to process and share and be inspirational about. And so we don't like to say it's about acting, because it's not about acting. It's about really being authentic and really getting into yourself. It's an inner journey, and we're very amazingly good coaches at this. And it's just a really deep, beautiful process. And then after the 6 weeks, you get to stand up in front of an audience, actually, that are very loving and very receptive, and share your story and inspire them. So that's what it is, basically, in a nutshell. But you can talk to me more about it, or Patrick, later, if you're interested. September 13th. And we're also starting a accredited class in the fall, finally. And it will more than likely be on a Wednesday night, okay? Because a lot of people are saying they have conflicts on Tuesday. And we seem to have a lot of people that want to take it. Anyway, so, so that's good. That's all that I can think of right now. Yeah.
Class.
Oh, yeah. Yes, and Dr. Peggy Price is teaching a class about a metaphysical view on Jesus the Christ. It's a 4-week class, and it's all about the new thought look at Jesus. It's going to be really, really good. I'm really excited about it, but it's going to be during the day. So if you have the opportunity to come during the day, it's going to be from in August. On the 7th, it starts from 10 a.m. to 12 noon, 4 Thursdays in a row. So I think, and she's taught it before, so it sounds fascinating. I think it's going to be really wonderful. Yes?
Will it be recorded?
That's up to Rob, if he can. Yeah, I guess it will be.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So with that said, before I introduce Patrick, he asked me to do the opening treatment. So let's just take a deep breath together. Tonight is what I know, a very amazing, special night. And I know that a transformation has already taken place. And that amazing power and presence, that source of all, that life force, God, whatever you call it, is right where we are, that intelligence, that divine love. And I know that that's what we bring here tonight as we study this master, Wallace Wattles, and all that he has to teach. And he has a lot to teach. And spoken through the words of Patrick Feren, I know that we already have received a lot tonight, and that we are able to use this in our life. So I know it's a very successful night, and I expect and know that something very transformational is going to take place for each of us as we enjoy this evening together. And as I said, it's already happened. So I just let the night unfold in all its goodness, in all its beauty, and all its intelligence, in all its community and fun, and all of that. And I know it's perfect, as I just give gratitude in advance for that perfection as I release this word into law, knowing it is done, as we affirm together. And so it is.
There we go.
And here he is, Patrick
There we go.
Feren.
Wow. Yes, I am loving this series so much, because we're getting to know all of our history of New Thought and what has brought us up to now. And we have a very, we meaning not separated, but we have this very rich history that goes all the way back to Plato and brings it all the way up to this moment now. And I think a lot of times we forget about that, especially at CSL Kauai, because a lot of people think, oh, this is just one little fraction, of on the island of something new, but actually it isn't new. We've been doing this for quite a while. So Wallace D. Wattles, who I can just, you ever had a name that you just want to keep saying? I know people that came just because his name was Wattles. I mean, it's that deep of a thing. But what I know about this man is I was introduced like 15 years ago, and I just became mesmerized by him. And what I'm learning this time around is that it's almost identical to Science of Mind and Spirit. And you'll see that even more as the night goes on. But what was interesting is that he's a long time before Ernest Holmes, who's the founder of Science of Mind and Spirit. And the things that he was bringing up then, Ernest Holmes never pretended that he woke up and had a revelation. He took where all the good was. But boy, there's a lot of taken in this one, because Wallace D. Wattles is saying a lot of the same thing. So let's go on with this. He says, to start us out, by thought, the thing you want is brought to you. By action, you receive it. And that's pretty much what our philosophy of Science of Mind and Spirit is that there's nothing you really have to go get. It's right there, right now. And now we get to, there he is. Now, don't judge a book by a cover, is what I always say. And here's the interesting thing. I know that he appears to look older than his years, but he actually passed away at 51. And which was surprising to a lot of people because he looks like 91 in this one. But I'm kidding. Oh, no, I'm not. And either are all of you. So Walter de los Wattles, 1860 to 1911. And I designed this thing tonight a little bit differently because we don't know a lot about him. I mean, looking up his history is really difficult. He was an American author, a New Thought writer. He remains personally somewhat obscure, but his writings have been widely quoted and remains in print in New Thought and self-help movements today. What's interesting, too, I'm jumping ahead, he passed away in 1911. Science of Mind text was not written until 1926 or whatever, the 27, there was another one or something in 26. But what's interesting about him is that when we go to his publications, most of them went out in 1910. The Science of Being Rich went in 1910. So he didn't have a lot of years with his fame and with all of his stuff, which is very interesting. So this is really one of the main premise is why I put it up there. There is a thinking stuff from which all things are made, and which in its original state permeates, penetrates, and fills the inner spaces of the universe. A thought in this substance produces the thing that is imagined by the thought. This right here, the inner spaces, how do you say quantum? Quantum physics. This gentleman right here, Wallace D. Wattles. I will say his name the entire night. But can you imagine that this was being said very early on in our New Thought movement? So, a few little facts about him. Hello. Wallace Wattles was born in Illinois, 1860. According to the 1880 census, he lived on a farm. I think they all did. I mean, it's amazing. Can you believe it? Another New Thought person was on a farm. Okay, lived on a farm in Nunda Township of McHenry County, Illinois, with his parents. His father was reported to be a gardener, his mother a housekeeper, and Wallace himself was a farm laborer. He had no siblings. So when you start to look these people up and they have no siblings, no family, you're like, wow. And we're still talking about him 100 years later. Wattles had no known siblings, no formal education, which was not uncommon in those times, right? Wattles traveled to Chicago, where several leading New Thought leaders of his time were located. He studied the writings of Ralph Waldo Emerson and many others. It's very interesting that Emerson seemed to be the catalyst for so much of our New Thought people here. He was also an avid student of the teachings of Jesus, and he has some books later on of that too. He went beyond scholarship by putting their theories into practice in his own life and became wealthy. Interesting. He became wealthy and studied wealth his entire life, and it was his last 3 years of life that he was incredibly wealthy. But there's a lot of years before that. So that's where I kind of put into this, like, oh, wow. He wrote the science of being rich, and yet he really didn't experience it fully. That's how dedicated he was to finding out what he couldn't understand. Hello, Ruth. What he could not understand is why this person was rich over here and this person was not. And why his father and why he could not provide the way he wanted to provide for his family when he somewhat knew this intuitively, that there was a power that had created everything. So why was this person, he has a lot of, is before its time, but Napoleon Hill did that too, right? All those years of going and interviewing people that were wealthy to find out, what are you doing that they're not doing? But what he's finding out through his studying and through his investigating, that none of it made any sense, because it didn't matter where you lived, what you did. A person could do the same job and one fail and one succeed. And he became obsessed with that inner longing to find out why people were successful and what was going on the mind. Well, Wattles was married to Abby Walters, and they had 3 children. Florence, who's really the only one that talks about anything about her father. Florence. I was just on, before you guys got here, on a little chat line. They're still chatting about Wattles, just so you'll know. And they're going back and forth about, different things. I'm going, wow, this man has been gone since 1911, and they're still bringing him up to find out more about it. Says a lot about him. Florence followed in her father's footsteps and became a socialist herself. In 1896, Mr. Wattles attended a convention of reformers in Chicago. That's where he met the leading New Thought leaders, which is, of course, Emma Curtis Hopkins, William Walker Atkinson, and George Davis Harron, which was really a catalyst for him to go forth. And he was also thrown out of the Methodist Church for heresy, because what this is talked about is what we're talking about on Sundays and what we're talking about anytime is known as heresy. It comes from one source and we're connected to it, and all of that. People were hauled out of a room like this because of saying that. And the gratitude and Christmas story, Florence tells one about when her father came home, and they had I was telling Charles today, they had one little stick for the Christmas tree. I mean, it made Charlie Brown look like he was lavish. And so he had that and a little cuffling box with a dollar bill in it. And she said the most amazing thing was when her father walked in and said, "Oh, how grateful I am. I have the tree, I have my children, I have this box. I don't think I could ever have anything more beautiful than this box," to his children. And the whole time in his mind, he's wanting so much more for his kids. But he really taught them the valuable lesson, not just do with whatever you have, but whatever's happening right now, let's be grateful for it. Because his entire philosophy, too, is no matter what's happening, if you do not have gratitude attached to it, it can never succeed. Doesn't matter how much money you have, because it cannot sustain, because you're based on the materialistic part of it and not the spiritual. Now, Elizabethtown was his publisher, and all the way to the very end, actually. Elizabeth and her husband, William, were instrumental in the development of this is something I did not know, the International New Thought Alliance, which is interesting because in the interfaith, I don't know, but maybe. It's ringing bells there. But what was interesting about her is that in those days, and the reason I put up his work is because I want, for a different reason. Usually we just kind of bypass, he did a lot of books. But what was interesting about this was the constructive use of foods. They were talking about stuff in those days that we think is so groundbreaking now. We're like, have you heard about organic? And they're like, oh yeah, I did, back on the farm when it actually was organic. See, Wattles, I told you I'd do you justice. Okay, but here's the thing. In these days of our New Thought history, people would just write like 3 or 4 pages and then turn it into a pamphlet. Do you know what I mean? They didn't wait till, I'm going to write a book, but I got to wait for it to be all perfect, and this is going to... They were like, I got a pamphlet, I got an idea, let's put it into a little thing and get it out there. Because what their idea was, when they found something out and they felt it was powerful, like what was going on in his life and what we're doing here in New Thought, he ran out and they wanted the world to see it. So we had Hellfire Harrison. But what I want you to look at is next to him the dates. 1910, his only novel. So then we have Jesus, the man and his work, a long speech made into a... That's right. And the base of a new Christ, 1902. I'm putting these because he passed away, transitioned in 1911. And so a new Christ, 1903. Letters to a Woman's Husband. What is it? A pamphlet. How to Get What You Want, 1907. Making of the Man Who Can. Okay, this is fascinating about the publishing. I think Judah will probably love this stuff because about the publishing. She would republish it like it wasn't doing well, so they just changed the name, changed the cover. And when we got our books, here it is. There was another one that was, see? Science of Getting, hold them up. And you have a green one. And they're same book. So I'm like looking through it and I'm going, wait a minute, this is the same book. And it's because we all know that if something's not selling, you change the cover, you put a little something different, a little pizzazz to it, and put the secret on there. Scientific Marriage, I'd like to read that. That sounds like a winner. What is Truth? This is the other thing. He wrote mostly for Nautilus magazine, which was Elizabethtown's. And what is interesting about this also, there's Hellfire. And then this is my trilogy, which is, I started with this one. And it has The Science of Getting Rich, we tried to get it. The Science of Being Great. And The Science of Being Well, which was his health. And I can get it on Amazon. But, I mean, I saw all these, what's very interesting is I saw all these notes I wrote. What? No, what are you doing?
No, go ahead.
Oh, it's okay. I can do it. Oh, okay. Thanks. No, I just want to say how interesting, how interesting it was that I made these notes 10 years ago, 8 years ago, and then I see where I am today, and I go, ooh. How interesting. Because this was not pre-Science of Mind for me, but it was just when I was starting in on Science of Mind, going in the road practitioner and minister, and how enthralled I was with him because he's really down to earth. Now here's the other, I just said, numerous book covers, especially The Science of Getting Rich. There are literally, what I was counting up, and I didn't want to put them on there, probably about 11 to 12 different book covers for the exact same thing, and a few of them have a different name. But there's something smart about that. Because this is a man who said, and Elizabethtown, who said, this message is so important to get out. And that's what I really admire about Wallace Wattles, is because he, even through not being able to afford anything, still said, I will find out what the science of being rich is. And I will find it out, and I will get it out to the people that he believed we needed to hear it. So, a little bit of the teachings. What I've also done is, towards the end, I've taken a little bit out of each book, of these 3 books, for us to kind of discuss and go through, and also show the comparison between that and Science of Mind and Spirit. Wallace Wattles declared that he had discovered the keys behind the new principles. And his principle is only one thing, and that is that there's only one substance that we're all working from. Bottom line, you can talk about it, you can argue about it. He doesn't really use God. I mean, he does, but not as the source, but he'll use source of supply. But that's where you go. No matter what's going on in your life, whether it be health, wealth, creativity, or your career or anything, it starts there. You think that you can go somewhere else, it's not going to happen. And that's his thing, and he stuck by it. And then his most famous book is The Science of Getting Rich. According to reports from his daughter, Florence Wattles was a pragmatist. He lived every page of his writing. She said, even in the days that he could not even afford anything, he lived the idea that he was rich. And he would not let go of that. He said, I don't care. I just was reading a fabulous thing that he wrote, very Science of Mind. Turn away from the condition. He said, even if you're in the middle of dis-ease, he's not saying, and I really want to make that clear, just like in Science of Mind and Spirit, he's not saying I'm not sick. But he's saying that every ounce of energy that you have needs to be spent on wellness. So if you're on a pain pill and you have a moment of relief, think wellness. In the midst of the most, and he knew poverty, so it's not like he didn't know anything about it. He wasn't living on the hill and looking down, saying, I think I'll write a book about being rich. He was thinking about a book about being rich when he was living in poverty. He turned away from poverty. He said, I cannot honor poverty and then want to claim richness in my life. I cannot claim health if what I'm doing is buying into the fact that I'm not healthy. So we go through this all the time. What do you do with that when you're not well? I know a lot of people who are experiencing dis-ease. All he's saying is the same thing that Ernest Holmes said. We say, yeah, it's here, but our focus on the wellness is what's going to bring us into whatever experience that is that we need. Wallace likewise challenged readers to apply the instruction he laid out in his books in their lives. Yeah, so practice it. In The Science of Getting Rich, he guaranteed that if they did so, they would surely get rich. The reason I like him too is he's real direct. Where we say, we can argue for our limitations all night. And he's saying, I got an idea. Why don't you give it a try and then get back to me? That was his thing. And he was so sure that if you read everything and you applied everything in that book, that you would have your wealth. Now, that's a tricky one. Even I heard somebody said to me that the title turned them off. Well, of course. Because you had The Science of Getting Rich. And he was like, I just read something today that he said, which will make a lot of people in the room happy. He did not believe in reading the newspaper or anything that went against what he was doing. And they said a lot of stuff, you're living in, back there, they're still saying that you're living in la. And you're doing, but his was all scientific. He said it does not make scientific sense for me to focus on the very thing that I'm trying to get away from. It's not scientific. And so, yes, I don't feel well. But every moment that I have that I can have one moment of feeling wellness, I breathe into it. I am that. I feel it. And then that will expand upon itself. Every time you can't pay the bill, you're not going, oh, and here's another month of not paying. That's what he's saying. No, he's saying, yeah, I got that one down. Let's try this one. And what science of mind and spirit, I mean, anybody who knows this philosophy knows exactly that this is saying the exact same thing. Which I'm finding fascinating because it really was before Ernest Holmes and Science of Mind and all of that. Wattles discovered that to get rich, you have to think in a certain way and act in a certain way. To begin, it is your mind, your thoughts that hold the key to your prosperity, right? Do we all agree or disagree that, and he's real big on conditions, that they're fine, but they're not who you are. They have no reality, no power of their own. Does that make sense? Different than they don't have any power. If you're in the midst of something, poverty or illness or anything else, it feels like there's a lot of power there. But there's also the very part of us that he's saying, yes, I understand that, but let's go to the other part and give that a chance as well. His most famous, oh, no, we already did that. Wattles discovered that. Okay. A little bit more on him, thinking and acting in a certain way. So what's this certain way that he's talking about? Can anyone want to guess that's been around? Inspired.
Acting as if.
Acting as if. Big one for him too. His thing is, and the king of visualization. His daughter said he would sit, and all he did was he would say, and then they would say, man, you're poor, you're poor. And he would go, yeah, but I'm visualizing right now. And what he visualized is that he was a successful author, that all of his work got out, and that he was healthy, and that he would have enough, and his big thing, enough to provide gifts for his family and people he loved. And he ran for office twice, so he's also political, lost both of them, but hey, he's out there. He put himself out there. That's what he said. He's kind of like a Brene Brown. I don't want to hear anything about anything if you're not out there with me. Because I'm going to go out and run for office. I'm going to make a difference. And I'm going to probably lose, but I'm out there. And basically, where are you? Except for judging me. Right? So, thinking and acting in a certain way. Wallace Wattles produces magical results. But he didn't stop there. Along with the science of getting rich and articles that regularly came out in the Nautilus, he published more science books with different covers that revolve around his philosophy. So he never stopped writing. His daughter said that there was very few times that she ever saw him that he was not writing. So obviously the visualization of being an author and writing, his thing was, I write. So that's what I do. I don't wait for, a sabbatical or somebody to tell me it's okay to go write. I write now. And I act as if. Act as if. I love this. He said, we are creators, not competitors. He has chapters on this. He said, this is the murder of creativity when you start competing. We're all creators. There's not, and when he says it, it's almost like magic when you read it, because he says, you look around you. How could we ever be without anything? Look at all we have. Look at everything we have. And look what he was looking at. He was looking at farm life when he's growing up and not having any money and doing his thing. But his thing was, if you would not compete, the moment you start competing with someone else for a job, for anything else, or if you start a center and then you're worried that somebody's going to start one down the street, any of it, that it's murder to your creativity. Your only job that he felt, that Wallace D. Wattles felt that you had, was to create. Because you were from the Creator. So because you were from the Creator, that's all your job is to do. Create, 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 create. He practiced extensively the technique of creative visualization. Florence recalled he formed a clear mental picture, a visual image, and then worked towards the manifestation of this vision. Is any of this new? But then it was. It was new then. Well, what?
I was going to think was with like Emma, and so it was new, yet not. Right. He was just right. He was just writing about it more.
Even them, they were hiding still in basements and not really putting it in pamphlets and getting out pamphlets. I just love that idea of the pamphlets, because we were just talking today about that, waiting for it's perfect, till it's perfect. And Rita and I experienced a lot of that, building the center, and people saying, well, yeah, we were talking about live streaming. Speaking of which, that when we were at the hotel, when we first started out, we were talking to a colleague, and we were saying, oh yeah, when we get the cameras and we get this, and when we save the money to that, and he goes, well, why don't you start live streaming now? And I said, well, because we don't have the camera, we don't have the, we're at a hotel room, by the way, passing out pamphlets. And, but he said, no, you just take your computer, have somebody sit in the front row, and then you turn it on. And you point it out. And I was like, I had a Wallace D. Wattles moment. I was just like, well, I'll be darned. Let's just do it. Honey, let's put on a show. No, and so this is what they did literally. So they did that, and then they went like this to show the crowd. And we're seen. And so that's what we did. And that's what he was saying. You stop competing. If you've got something to do, if you got a gift, get out there and give it. And it was so inspiring to see that, because it's like, what are we waiting for? We go to write a book. I've got this great book, and then time goes by, and I'm thinking, well, as soon as I put out a little time for it. No, Wallace D. Wattles, what does he say? Now, visualize an image and then work towards a manifestation of it. Ba-ba. Now, this is an interesting part, his legacy. He really didn't have it till after he left, because she said he had 3 really wealthy years. And then he transitioned at 51 years old. 51. So Wallace D. Wattles remains a rather mysterious man. Whilst his work remains widely distributed, quoted, and ever popular on the subject of self-help, Mr. Wallace remains indeed quite an enigma and a rather mysterious man. There is literally so little about this man. We don't know how he raised his family, how he did this. There is a biography that she did, Florence did, that I didn't get, but supposedly he gets into a little bit more of raising. Never hear anything about his other kids, just Florence. The favorite, no. The Science of Getting Rich, which first came out in 1910, has withstood the test of time and remains as one of the most highly regarded books on becoming wealthy. Over the years, it has been reprinted by publishers worldwide. This thing is still being put out in CEOs along with Napoleon's. They're still passing that book around. They're still saying, you want to work for the company? Because once you have a principle and it works, it may take us 100 years to start using it, but the principle is still there, right? So good God, whatever you want to call it, didn't change in the 100 years and say, no, I've upgraded. The principle is still the same. So the book has also inspired a number of contemporary authors. So here's when we looked at, we all know Rhonda Burns, probably, right? From The Secret. And that was in 2006. Now, I had to debate whether or not I was going to read the whole letter from Rhonda Burns, but I think I decided that it was perfect, because it tells a lot about him and what this book does for people. So, ba-ba, a note from Rhonda. So, this is what she has to say. It's a little long, but we'll get something out of this. Less than 2 years ago, at a time in my life when I was facing challenges from every direction, business, relationships, family, you name it, I stumbled across this book, or to be more accurate, it stumbled upon me. I can honestly say that since that first night when a tattered printed transcript found its way to me, thanks to one of my daughters, my life has never been the same. I bring this up because this is modern. This is our current time. And I remember when The Secret came out, if anybody, they were having house parties all over Los Angeles. I mean, I remember the house parties, and people were, and I already knew this when I was watching. I'm going, wow, they're really, and everybody's like, whoa, another secret party. And then we're going, and people, and what was great about this was it started to get people interested in this movement, that there was a possibility. I have my opinions of it, which are only opinions, but it looked like a lot of it was facing towards materialism and creating that, which was really not the message. The message was we could create anything that we wanted from the inside out. So Wallace Wattles explains in simple, straightforward language how anyone, regardless of their background or circumstances, can attract wealth into their lives. The opening sentence of chapter 1 of this timeless little masterpiece says it all. She's still talking about something that happened 100 years before her, right? From Rhonda, continue. Whatever may be said in praise of poverty, this is Ernest. This is, maybe, Wallace Wattles. Whatever may be said in praise of poverty, the fact remains that it is not possible to live a really complete or successful life unless one is rich. Now let's stop there, because I can just feel that people will go, you don't have to be rich to be happy. You don't have to be rich to be happy. And that's fine. But go ask somebody who can't feed their children where they're at. And then you tell me about what people are doing with wealth or that whole idea of that there's something wrong. And I'm not saying in this room. I'm just saying generally. When you start using blanket statements like he did, and he didn't apologize for him at all. Unless one is rich. Rich is a state of mind. And rich, he also means rich. He means having money. He means paying your bills. He means buying your kids something that, a surprise gift. He means that as well. But what he's really meaning is the power that we have within us is the richness that we get to use. And he's very clear about that. And once I had read it and internalized its simple knowledge, my own life immediately turned around. Her television production business started to go from strength to strength. I love that line. Went from strength to strength. My income level soared, relationships miraculously healed, and marvelous new ones came pouring in from all directions. Because this is the truth. We may divide them. Here's my health. Here's my wealth. Here's my creativity. We may want to divide them all we want, but once you're rocking in one area, it just starts moving to all of them, right? I don't think he said rocking in all areas, but I'm giving my spin on Wattles. So where were we? Relationships miraculously healed and marvelous new ones came pouring in from all directions. This is a common experience for people who discover this miracle book, and it will for you too. Once you learn and apply its down-to-earth, uncomplicated precepts. What do you think that means? What?
It's simple, don't complicate it.
Right. So how? There you go. So how would you complicate it, Mr. LeMay?
Well, how I would complicate it is I would be trying to think of better, faster, easier, more new ways to do something that doesn't need to be done. Just KISS.
There you go. Or trying to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt why this stuff does not work. I know I've done it myself. It's like, I will work tirelessly to prove to you that this is not a good world. It is, I will do that. I will do it. I promise you, So, and he's saying just the opposite. Uncomplicated. This week's message is keep it simple. Boy, have I made life complicated at times. He's saying 100 years ago, this man, and I'll be showing you the Wattles dance before we leave. But he really had something really going on, and he was so determined and so passionate, as we are with ours as well. Her last little part. This book is the key to prosperity you have longed for. It will change your life. Be aware as you read it that it was written almost 100 years ago. Some of the language is a little dated or quaint, and you'll need to come to it with an open mind and heart. Remember, though, you are about to discover an exciting new reality. You are about to learn the fundamental principles of wealth creation and life success. Stay with it. As Wallace himself says, trust and believe. Whatever you want in life is right there waiting for you. With this book, it is right in your hands. Enjoy, Rhonda Byrne. Yeah. Just an idea that, and the reason I was so fascinated with it is it's so current. I mean, a lot of people, we think we have to find that newest thing, right? We're saying the same thing. We keep saying the same thing. Look at all the self-help books. I'm sorry. Oh my God. The bookstore's open until 8 o'clock tonight. But it's true, and I'll tell you why. I mean, I'm putting a little bit of Patrick in here, as I do. But here's the thing. We can read all the books that we want. And I'm reading it again and really got totally motivated again. But until we apply it, is what he's saying, which every person says. It doesn't matter what person's out there, from Tony Robbins to Emma Curtis, they all said it. They said, this is going to do us no good unless we apply it. And it takes practice. And I know we hear that, but the other we've got down. That's what his message was too. We got this other stuff down. We know how to do it. Now let's try to do something new. Thank you, Rhonda. Okay, just a couple things. I got 3 little things for each book. And then we will, and a few little things, little master things I found. I'm going to actually read this because I can. So, if I can. To think, thank you, actually, wow. There's been a miracle. To think health when surrounded by the appearance of disease, or to think riches when the mindset is that of poverty, requires power. I will say that again. To think health when surrounded by the appearance of disease, or to think riches when in the midst of poverty, requires power. Goes on. But the one who requires, all right. I lost my miracle all of a sudden and went right. Actually, it was me trying to read my own writing is really what happened. Power, but wow. But the one who requires this power becomes a mastermind. The one that requires and attains this power becomes a mastermind. He can conquer fate. He can have whatever he wants. I really like this because let's talk fate for just a moment. So when it says you become, once you get this power and you accept it, you become a mastermind, right? Yeah. A mastermind. So then he says he can conquer fate. He can have whatever he wants. So we have fate a little different in the New Thought teachings. So somebody explain fate to me. Just because you thought you were just coming to hear me, but Ron's back up at bat here.
It's a preconceived notion that life has already determined where you should go, who you should be, what should happen, and there's nothing you can do to change it. So you just stay there in whatever mode that is.
Thank you very much. Fate is also, Charles, do you have one? No. Fate is also what we call, and I put a little note next to it, it's called a tendency. We all have a fate, a tendency. And I'll explain what that is. Not even in the inherited, we're not even talking the body right now. If you were born in the hood, right? Yeah, there you go. Oh, there we go. No, actually, I was actually born nearby as well. But if you're born in the hood, there's a tendency that you might end up staying there because that's what's given. That says you have a fate. And good God, whatever, dealt you some cards. And now we get, or the person, it doesn't matter. We're using the hood, but there's a tendency. There's also a tendency, which is very interesting, about wealth. There's a tendency that if you were born into wealth, that you're going to have a wealthy life. We all know how wrong that assumption is. I know lots of people that are very wealthy, and most of it has been up their nose with cocaine and with other stuff. This isn't about a judgment. This is about the idea that we all have a tendency to do anything. We have a tendency, if we're in a relationship that's not working for us, we have a tendency to believe that that's what relationships are. So there is really, we don't believe in fate. Karma is the other thing. Karma, it's my karma. It's my karma. And I'm thinking, wow. So what is the karma? So what's karma? Cause and effect. In our teaching it is, and in a lot of teachings. But what they say is about, the thing about karma is that I did this before, once again tendency, I did this before and now I'm being punished for it in this one, or I'm poor because I was rich in another lifetime. Well, we can just justify anywhere we want to, but from where I stand in my mind, that karma can be, as the big Jesus, the way shower said, karma is, you can erase karma instantly. That was the only reason that his message was that nothing, it's done into you as you believe. The end of the story. Move on. Go sin no more, or whatever. And go sin no more just basically means, go think aright. And we'll see you, go think aright. So let's look at this. So these are from his words. The book is pragmatic, not philosophical. A practical manual, not a book based upon theories. It is intended for men, and he uses and women, which is really, because it's a real he, I know, whose most pressing need is for money, who wish to get rich first and then philosophize afterward. Now, once again, for the people that are thinking that this is all about rich and, get the money, let me tell you what this is really about. This is so beautiful that should be pinned up on my wall when I wake up in the morning. Because let's talk about this after we're rich. Because somebody said money doesn't buy happiness. And I'm sick of people thinking that it does. And, and where is that? The prosperity gospels. You guys are part of the prosperity gospels. You're saying that it's all about rich and rich and rich. I'm thinking, no, but I've never met anyone that has attained, that came to me and said that they weren't, that money was, something was wrong with it. I've usually heard from people, including myself, that had not attained it. And I was like, I don't need money. I mean, well, that's because you don't have any. And that's okay. And there's no judgment on it, man. But I'm also not going to apologize. We did the mental equivalent class last week, and it was so much fun to watch the pictures and what we thought of different levels of wealth. He goes on, the monistic, when we thought it was the other one, but I looked it up. The monistic theory of the universe, the theory that one is all and that all is one. That one substance manifests itself as the seeming many elements of the material world is of Hindu origin. Look at this. Talking about Hindu origin and has been gradually winning its way into the thought of the Western world for 200 years. It is the foundation of all, and I didn't change it because I honored the work, of all the Oriental philosophies, and of those of Descartes, Spinoza, Schopenhauer, Hegel, and Emerson. But what this tells me is that we have a rich history here. That we have, that it is of all one thing. We've been saying we're all one. We're all one. That's all that it is. That's all that it is. So then, in The Science of Getting Rich, if you wish to know how the conclusions were arrived at, I love this, read the writings of the authors mentioned above. And if you wish to reap the fruits of their philosophies in actual practice, read this book and do exactly as it tells you to do. Love him. Love him. What he's basically saying is, shut up and be rich, man. I mean, be whatever you want. But I love this. It's like, we can discuss all of what that is. But he's like, today it would be like Nike, right? Just do it. Just do it. Stop philosophizing about it, proving it wrong.